I think the element of being afraid means that you can depend more on God than yourself, which is kind of a good place to be.
And you just have to go back to those foundational things, those verses that you learned. Have no anxiety about anything. Give everything over to God and He'll give you that peace. Doubt has a way of creeping in no matter where you are on this journey. I have the confidence that God has put an artistic gift in me, so we should use whatever God gives us, whatever that is.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our YWAM Dunham Podcast. We're really glad that you've been able to join us for these last episodes, and we're looking forward to this episode that we have today. I'm a little new to the podcast myself, so my name is Dan. I have been working here with Youth of the Mission Dunham for 16 years now, and in particular, I work with the School of Photography that we run once a year. And so this week I have the privilege to be talking with two wonderful storytellers, a couple that have worked together in photojournalism for 49 years now. Working together, we have Gary and Vivian Chapman here. Gary, who has worked as a photographer, Vivian, who carries a lot of the storytelling elements, who carries a lot of the behind-the-scenes aspect, and they're just a wonderful couple working together. We've been really encouraged and blessed to have them share with our photographers this week. And so, thank you guys so much for being here.
Sure, thank you.
We're really happy to have you. Now, you come with lots of experience, and that's been one thing our photographers have really appreciated gleaning from over the years. And so you guys have covered stories in over 80 different countries and worked on those stories together. And so I thought, just for fun, this is a YWAM Dunham podcast, people who are on missions, who are traveling. As people who have traveled to so many different places and who have been in all kinds of environments, what is your pro tip for dealing with things like jet lag, or when you're exhausted on an assignment in the early hours of the night, or traveling on bumpy roads? What's been the most helpful to help you guys get through?
I remember when I was a very young photographer, just starting out, I heard a traveling preacher came to our church, and he said he traveled so much, and that's just what I was wanting to do. So the preacher said, I don't have time to have jet lag. So I pray to God and have faith that I will never have jet lag. And you know what? I said, oh, if he can do that, I can do that too. So I remember praying, God, I don't have time for jet lag. And, God was faithful to that simple prayer for many, 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 many years. And then one day I started thinking, I'm tired. I'm really tired. And maybe my faith is not there now. So I started doing things like when you're on the plane, I immediately set my watch or whatever, or my mind at least, to be where I'm going. So I sleep when I'm arriving, when those people are sleeping, drink a lot of water. And so when my faith was weak, I started doing that.
Anything to add there, Vivian?
So I have a recent tip. If this doesn't have much to do with jet lag, but it does have to do with feet.
Okay.
And I have been wearing compression socks, and that's very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comfort, as we travel, it's important. Helps you stay fresh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Last year I went to the Philippines, and that's kind of a long haul from the Atlanta area.
Yeah.
So compression socks.
Yeah, but she had a nightmare person sitting next to her on the way back, right?
Oh, yeah.
She was in like a middle or whatever.
Okay.
And how many hours?
I don't know. A lot. A lot of hours.
10, 12, 14 hours. And the guy never moved.
He slept the whole time.
Oh,
so that's
she couldn't get out. She couldn't get out
that's
to
his
walk.
tip. So it was hard to wake him up to get out.
I didn't even wake him up. I just kind of climbed over him.
Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't know you'd climbed over him.
Yeah, I just climbed over him. I didn't want to disturb his sleep.
So aerobics are also helpful. In the mix.
Yeah.
Get an aisle seat.
Yeah, and try to go to the bathroom a lot, or just walk up and down the aisles. That helps too.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, awesome. So, I must say, I think one of the things I've really appreciated hearing from you guys this week, and I know our students have as well, is you guys have worked for all kinds of different organizations. You've done work for Tom's Shoes, for Delta Airlines, World Vision, National Geographic, different newspapers. And so you guys bring a lot of professional experience. But I think one of the things that was most encouraging for us to hear, apart from the technical know-how, which was very incredible. You guys were teaching on composition and humanitarian photography this week. But it was just really this intersection of faith, the faith journey for you guys as creatives, as communicators, as storytellers, and how you intersect faith with the workforce that you guys are in, that field that you're in. And so I was wondering, just before we get into a little bit that more detail, would you guys mind telling me a little bit, Gary, kind of what was it that got you into photography? And perhaps maybe afterwards, Vivian, just sharing a little bit about what kind of got you excited about writing and storytelling, and just to kind of hear where the genesis of those seeds in your lives came from.
Yeah, God has a way of moving us along in different directions. I wanted to be an underwater photographer for Jacques Cousteau, who was a famous marine biologist, oceanographer. So I went to school. I studied French.
Oh, wow.
I wore a little red beanie cap like all the French sailors did on his boat. But when I went to university and was studying marine biology, I got tired of taking pictures of fish and also chemistry. I didn't particularly like chemistry. So I switched to photojournalism, and that's how I got into newspapers and magazines.
Okay. Now, a quick question for you there. Do you have a memory of the first time you picked up a camera or used a camera? And if so, can you describe to me what that first picture was and how you felt when you saw it, or even why you took it?
I was telling the students today, in fact, that when I first started, I wanted to be an artist. I mean, when I was very young, I wanted to be an artist. But then I even took art lessons.
Okay.
But I never got very good at it. So then I picked up a camera, and my first pictures were pretty awful. But my mom, she encouraged me.
Yeah.
So those encouraging words kind of set me down that path, and that's how I switched to photography and loved it.
Cool. So just having the support of someone who really mentored and encouraged you.
I've seen that all through my careers. It's it's a person here, a person there, and a person there that seems to come into your life that encourages you with positive words. Mm-hmm. So that's what, at this stage of our life now, that's what we want to do. That's why we have enjoyed teaching in YWAM for many, many years now.
Okay, wonderful. Awesome. And what about you, Vivian? Just your passion for storytelling or writing, where did that come from?
So for me, it was just encouragement from my high school teachers. They said I was a good writer. And so I decided to pursue that. Mm-hmm. And I was the editor of our college magazine. I needed a photographer, and actually that's the connection that we made. Okay. I was going to be writing the pieces, and I needed a photographer. 2 people applied. And one was cute, one wasn't. I picked the cute one. But aside from that, we really made a good team. I was doing the writing. He was doing all the photography, and that was really just such a great connection. We really worked well together. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of been our trajectory on and off during the years. Mm-hmm.
Great. Awesome. Now, it brings me to a little question. I think right now in our day and age, I think just as photography in some ways shook the world of painting and visual arts when photography was first introduced, I think having access to video the way we do too, perhaps has shaken the space of photography and even, photojournalism and even the written word and reading those things. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people interacting with video journalism, with different news in that kind of way. But what do you guys feel is still the place of the still image and just the act of storytelling? Spending time listening to people's stories and sharing those stories in our day and age. Is it still relevant? And if so, kind of what are some of the things that would make you say so?
I would think maybe your generation and younger generations, at least my generation. I remember still images. I don't remember the videos. Not to say videos aren't important. They are. Yeah. But each one has a specific place. And I think that still images can just burn themselves into you, into your memory. And also just the power of storytelling. I was telling the students this week that there was a group that we made some pictures of what was going on in this nonprofit. And because of those pictures, they raised a lot of money to help that organization. So that is the power of photos still. Mm-hmm. I mean, the videos can do the same, but I think there's a place for both.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The power of the still photo, I think, is still relevant.
Yeah. Oh, good. Mm-hmm. Good. And so you guys, we had you coming sharing on composition. And so you've definitely helped us a lot with composition techniques, toolkits for telling good visual stories and those kinds of things, which have been very helpful. But one of the areas where you guys have really, I think, sought or specifically had a particular heartbeat is for humanitarian photography. So how do we tell the stories of people, whether around the world or even at home in Atlanta where you guys live, telling stories of that are encouraging, that bring hope, that bring connection there. And I'm just wondering, kind of, what was the process of you guys being called into that stream, if you will, of photojournalism? And is there a story or two that really stick out to you, that really mark you as like, this is, you mentioned already a little bit, but like, this is why we're doing this, and this is a big encouragement to us. So just wondering kind of that process of calling there, maybe how the Lord was speaking to you guys in the midst of that.
Do you have anything on that one?
I do, but I thought you were going to.
Go ahead and start.
Okay, so we were really, I'll start with the seed. We were I was by myself and went to hear a missionary speak. Mm-hmm. And I was pregnant at the time, and he was showing his vision for what he was going to do with youth all around the world. And he started with Latin America. I'm fluent in Spanish. And so I listened to his speech, and it was amazing to me. I thought, oh, I wish I could go. I could help him with interpreting, and I wish Gary could go because he could help with pictures, because this particular missionary's work was not very good.
His pictures were not very good.
And so I went up to him after, and I said, I speak Spanish. I know you're going to Latin America. How about, I can't go with you this year because I'm pregnant, but how about next year we stay in touch? My husband, Gary, was working for the Louisville Courier-Journal at the time. And my husband's a professional photographer. We could work together. We could help you. And that was the seed. So we just kept talking to him during the year, and we had our baby. And he said yes for the following year. Our daughter turned 1 in Venezuela. And, and we helped him with that particular project in Venezuela. That was the seed.
Yeah, that was the seed. And I just fell in love with it because it was very similar to photojournalism for magazines and newspapers. But
storytelling.
The storytelling aspect.
Sure.
But we were also magnifying these stories of what good was happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a story that I was photographing a midwife in Ghana, and she was at a clinic way, way, way out in the bush, and she had delivered 1,600 babies in 10 years and hadn't lost one of them.
With no running water.
And no electricity. She had delivered 1,600 babies. And to be able to get into somebody's life like that, and the privilege, the honor to photograph that and to share that with people, to me, that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Cool. That's so good. What do you think have been some keys for you guys as you are, coming into different places and trying to get an understanding of the story that's there, of the people that you're photographing, that you're interviewing? What have been some of the most valuable things or learning lessons for you guys as you've kind of entered into connection with these people and learned their story and how, like, just even telling it? What have been some kind of keys for you guys? And just gathering those stories and figuring out how to tell them in a way that's honest, that's truthful, that's honoring.
What? Go ahead.
Okay, so for me, it's very clear. The one that stands out to me is when my one trip to Pakistan with Gary, just learning about how the persecuted church responds to that persecution was a huge learning point for me. For example, we were talking with this man that is the principal of a school, and many times he would get threats of, we're going to, burn the school or whatever. And he would say to them, when he answered the phone call, he would say, Before you do that, will you join me with a cup of tea? And it was, what?
Wow.
And he told me that they would take him up on that, the person that called and made the threat, and that they would talk. And at the end of the talk, he was able to just share, be a man of peace and share. And the school never got burned down or whatever. That's how he handled it. And I thought, what a beautiful lesson that when you're threatened like that you could have that kind of response to someone as a Christian. That was just an amazing lesson for me.
Sure.
I think approaching the story with humility, not going in thinking, I know what the story's about. I'm going to photograph it this way and, directing people to do something, it's approaching it with humility. And also, I was telling the students this week too, that I approach the Holy Spirit before going in and ask God to give me wisdom on who to photograph, what to photograph, and what not to photograph. There are times to put the camera down.
Yeah.
And we have to have the wisdom of God to know when that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would agree with humility and also listening to the people that it's their story.
Yeah.
And we do our best to tell their story. So doing a lot of listening, having a lot of conversations, that's really important.
Yeah. One of the first stories we did together, we made the mistake of going in thinking we knew what it was all about. And I came in, walked into the town with my cameras hanging all over me, and it's just like it went downhill from there.
Yeah, we were very young and naive.
We didn't know. So it's walk in with humility and find out what the story really is before you start taking pictures.
And that was for a personal project. So we weren't representing a nonprofit that we usually when we work, we have a representative from the nonprofit there and they've already made contacts, but this was a personal project and we did it all wrong. We learned.
Yeah, sometimes that's the best way to learn, even though it can be tough to learn in the moments. But no, I appreciate you guys saying that. I mean, I think it has a lot to speak to the relevancy of even today. Are we listening to people? Are we actually taking time to get to know someone's perspective before we launch into some kind of conversation or some kind of dialogue? I think we can easily assume we have so much information that comes to us today, I think, that it can be really easy to absorb that information and think we know, when we in reality haven't spent time talking to, listening to, valuing people's stories. So no, I appreciate you guys saying that. Has there been any other things for you guys because it's a really beautiful thing to be invited into the intimacy of someone's life, and some of the stories you're covering, as you were sharing with us this week as well, sometimes it's these really encouraging, uplifting stories. Sometimes it's people going through some real hard times, perhaps after some kind of natural disaster or different things like that. What are some other things that have helped you guys as you've connected with those whose stories you're being entrusted with and sharing and getting those stories?
Well, first off, I think honesty, sharing their stories in integrity and honesty and ethically, I think is probably the biggest thing. Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah, I would say, and again, I would repeat, listening, lots of listening first, trying to understand first before you insert yourself.
Yeah, we want to help. We don't want to hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's our biggest thing whenever we go on a story for a nonprofit, faith-based or secular. We just say, please don't let our presence help our presence to be a blessing and not a hindrance to these people, and not something that would make them feel bad. So, but I think when we do go into places and stories like disasters and that kind of thing, I think the thing that I have to deal with after I come back is the feeling of guilt. The feeling of guilt, like, okay, I've gone into this person's life, taken their pictures, done their stories, but then I'm leaving. I'm going back to a place of safety, yet these people are still in another place, a place of danger possibly. Yeah. So I think the thing that has helped me on that is that I've learned to actually use the pictures as a reference for praying for these people. I look at the pictures and I lift up each person that, I'm photographing, kind of a thing, and pray for them, because otherwise I just feel guilty that I'm not there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a key I was, picking up from you guys this week too, in any situation where you're doing, taking someone's photo or telling someone's story, it's really that idea of having permission as well, So I think that can sometimes be, perhaps, I know for myself in my excitement as, a photographer, there's been times where I've rushed into taking a photo and then I have to realize afterwards or catch myself afterwards and be like, well, I didn't ask, and like, how would it feel if a camera was, I'm sitting here talking around a table with you guys and I have cameras in my face and in your faces too. Now, of course, we're asked, but how does it feel to have that camera in our intimacy? So do you have any comments on just the process of getting permission and asking permission?
It used to be that sometimes I would take pictures and I wouldn't even know the person's name.
Yeah.
Before or after. Before taking the picture, I wouldn't ask their name.
Yeah.
And after taking the picture, I wouldn't ask their name.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just not right.
Yeah.
So you learned.
So I learned. I learned, you
Yeah.
know. And usually when we're working for a nonprofit, we have an in with that village, that town, that business or whatever. So it's fairly easy to get in. But I've since learned that I'm always getting the person's name.
Yeah.
I think it validates that person too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They want to tell their story. And so we, again, that forming that relationship with them is super important.
Yeah. I would say that probably 90-something%, maybe even 95% of the people that we ask if we can take their picture agree simply because they want to tell their story.
Yeah.
I mean, a few people say no, and we respect that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. No, that's wonderful. You guys have one thing I've appreciated about you guys too is you share very openly, but also just that place of faith in your life too. I know you've talked about different moments where launching into this new adventure of photojournalism, it's a risk, it's challenging, feeling like the Lord was calling you in that direction, feeling excited about it, but also all kinds of fears and questions that bubble up. And you've mentioned a number of times during this week with us, just the place of faith and relationship with Jesus and that. And so I was just wondering if you guys could speak into, what is it about your relationship with Jesus that's been grounding for you, that's been helpful for you as you've navigated entering into such a field, and maybe how has that helped you guys as you've continued on in this work for decades, for a long time now?
Well, yeah, but at the beginning it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I mean, there were many times when me especially was very afraid. Vivian even says that at times I was curled up in the fetal position on the bed because I was so scared. So, speaking to a young photographer now, I would say God will help you step by step. And little by little, you will gain the confidence that God will help you. Mm-hmm. That's the great thing about being old. It's not necessarily older. Excuse me. That's the great thing about being older is that there's a track record with you and God.
Yeah.
So fear comes. One of the students asked this week. She asked, "When did you know that you were a good photographer?" And I'm thinking, it's a great question. I had to think about it because nobody's ever asked that before. And I'm thinking, sometimes I still don't know if I'm a good photographer. So doubt has a way of creeping in no matter where you are on this journey. Mm-hmm. Doubt can come in and you just have to go back to those foundational things, those verses that you learned early on. Have no anxiety about anything, but give everything over to God and He'll give you that peace. I don't know how many times on assignments I've actually just repeating that to myself, have no anxiety about anything. And sometimes when we're working together, if I'm taking a picture and all of a sudden my camera's not working or the lights don't work if I'm taking a portrait, I'll turn around to Vivian and go, and she'll know that there's a problem.
International sign language.
Yeah. So we immediately start praying without the person knowing we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And miraculously, many times God has actually fixed equipment. I can't explain that. I don't know if you believe in miracles or not, but I do.
We believe in miracles.
I believe in miracles, even to fix cameras and lights.
Yeah, and for me, I would say one of the most one of the most wonderful things is just seeing what God is doing all around the earth, all around the planet. To me, that is so beautiful that we have had the privilege to have that global picture of, I think sometimes, and we live in the U.S., that people don't always see what He's doing all around the earth.
Yeah.
And that's been, for me, one of the most wonderful things about doing this kind of work.
Yeah, some of the traditions may be different. You might worship a little different, but when you see somebody's hands raised and they're praising God, and in a language, you don't know even, it's pretty wonderful. So yeah.
And just seeing what these different organizations are doing, whether it's in education or whether it's providing safe water or it's disaster relief or medical, whatever it is, just watching how the growth and the help that's happening in these communities.
Yeah, we made a commitment early on that we would work for either faith-based groups, preferably faith-based groups, but also any secular group if they were doing good in the world somewhere. So if somebody is helping somebody, I'm willing to
go for it.
To go for that
Yeah.
and do their story. So yeah.
Yeah. What have been some other maybe key elements for you in your faith that's really helped you guys as you've been working in this field? Either things that have helped you as you work with people of different cultures or backgrounds, or things that have helped you as you, I mean, sometimes some of the stories you guys are seeing are tough to see as well, you know, so things that have helped you process those. You've mentioned prayer. Has there been other aspects of faith or just even faith community that have really come to help you guys as you've been doing this important work?
Vivian mentioned we worked in Pakistan. I've been there 5 times, and I made a great friend in Pakistan, a Pakistani pastor. And for many, many years, I set my alarm at 7 a.m. on Sunday because that was the time when they were doing a worship service in Pakistan. So I was praying for them while they were doing a worship service in Pakistan. And the thing is, he's still praying for me, even after all these many, many years since 2009. In fact, he said this week, I'm praying for you and your students this week, because he knew we were teaching. So to have that kind of friendship with another believer from a totally different culture is amazing.
Yeah. And I would just say, again, for me, is just how exciting it is to see God being faithful all around the world. That just brings me such joy, just a lot of joy, just to see that he is indeed everywhere.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm thinking about it, and I think sometimes when we as believers, it depends on the streams of church background and experience that we come from, but I think sometimes we can have a mentality, or we can easily have a mentality that to do ministry or the work for the Lord, or we kind of have these boxes often, I think, that we will tend to fit things in. And so, things like pastors or missionaries or something like that. And those roles are so significant and they play such an important role. But sometimes I find for other creatives or artists as well, they can maybe struggle to think like, well, how does my gift fit into what God is doing worldwide, like you're saying? And I was just wondering, what would you say to a young creative today, whether they be a creative behind a camera or with a paintbrush or with a pen, and what would you say to them as the Christians to encourage them in that gifting, and perhaps how to use that gifting to serve the Lord, to serve communities around them? Because I think it can be sometimes a hard place for some to figure out, where do I fit, and does this fit, or should I just do something else? And so I just wonder, what advice would you have? Or
I remember being in multiple villages around the world at different times, and I'm taking pictures, but then the pastor would point me out and say, we want you to speak to our people now. And I'm thinking, okay. And so I put my camera down. But one of the things I've said several times is I'm telling the people there, I'm not a doctor. I can't heal you, with medicine, modern medicine. I'm not a pastor. I'm not going to be preaching to you. I'm not even a teacher very well. I mean, I could try, but I'm not that good. I'm not that good.
A Bible teacher.
Yeah.
A Bible teacher.
Yeah, as a Bible teacher.
Yeah.
So, I'm not that good at that. But I know I have the confidence that God has put an artistic gift in me. So I should share that in any way I can. And so I see people like farmers and, other kind of people that aren't pastors either. And they look up and they get it, that we should use whatever God gives us, whatever that is.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're writing, then telling those stories, have them written down and having some kind of mechanism to put those out there. that's wonderful.
Mhm.
That is wonderful. It's as valuable as preaching.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And I mean, I think it can sometimes feel like a risk, I think, too. I think you guys alluded to this a little bit this week as well. Like, you know that God has called you as creatives to share that gift. And it's, sometimes I think in certain ways you guys were kind of maybe pioneering a little bit at a time where maybe, at least in your context, it was not as common to say, hey, like I can be a Christian working as salt and light, and that's valuable for the kingdom of the Lord. But it can be scary. I think about you guys kind of, you're talking about you're going out, you're bringing the report of what God's doing around the world. And it's like those 12 men that went into the promised land to say like, hey, there's something good happening here and God has something good for us. And so, those giftings allow you to do that, but it's also a risk to branch out into something new and perhaps to feel, I don't know, is my gifting received in this way? Will people from my Christian community understand and support what I'm doing? Or just even from a business perspective, it can be like, oh man, how do I branch out in that place? And so I was just wondering, for other creatives that might be listening to the podcast, Christian creatives, what would you guys say to encourage those who are feeling a calling from the Lord to step out there and do something, but have all those doubts and have all those, sometimes our inner dialogue can really stop us short. Like, what would you say to encourage people that are on the doorstep of risk in a sense and wanting to step out, but might be unsure, unconfident to do it? Because I think you guys are a wonderful example of having taken those risks and having dealt with the consequences, good and challenging in the midst of it. But what would you say to a Christian creative who's at that place of risk in their life?
I mean, we have taken a lot of risk, but remember there were also episodes before I took those risks, we took those risks where I was in a fetal position. Remember that, So I think the thing that I've learned as we have gotten older, not old, older, is that change is okay. Yeah. Change should be embraced. We should be glad that there's change, that we can take a new direction and be excited about that. So, risk is going to be part of it. It definitely is. But being older, I can't remember a time that I felt God let us down or let us go off on our own kind of thing. It's always, even though it's been scary, God has a way of making that road straight. Making it work.
Mm-hmm. I would say it's okay to be afraid.
Yeah.
It's okay to be afraid.
And do it afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the element of being afraid means that you are depending on more, you can depend more on God than yourself, which is kind of a good place to be.
Yeah.
It keeps you uncomfortable and it keeps you humble.
Yeah.
So, for sure, do it afraid. For example, when I was talking about that, when you get an opportunity, like when I saw that missionary come, I mean, we had never seen before, anybody that was doing those stories for missionaries. I mean, everybody has stories, or at least in our age and time, everybody would say, oh, the missionary came with those terrible pictures and we had to endure that.
That was the stereotype at the time. Okay.
That was the stereotype at the time. And so I didn't realize, I just saw that opportunity and I thought, okay, I think we can do this. Mm-hmm. I think, not this year, I'm pregnant, next year. And when you see any bit of a door open, go ahead and take that door and see how God helps you walk through it.
Yeah, there have been times when there's a door open in front of us and we think we're supposed to go through it. And we say, God, we're going to go through this door, but we give you permission to close it as we try to go through.
As if God needs permission.
that permission,
it's almost permission for yourself.
Yeah, it's permission for myself. I know that sounded weird, but yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so.
And other times we have wanted to go through the door and bam, it was shut.
Yeah, it was shut. So.
Yeah. And so how have you dealt with that when it gets shut? Like, what's that process look like?
Get mad.
Ask some big questions.
Yeah, ask big questions. Like, why didn't that work?
Why didn't that work?
But hindsight, I remember I didn't get a job one time that I really wanted, and I was so upset. It's like, this was my job. This is, but then looking back.
It was actually for a nonprofit.
It was a staff photographer job for a nonprofit. I thought this is going to be perfect.
Yes.
But I didn't get it. And thank God I didn't. Because I didn't, I started, working for myself only and getting the jobs. And I got to work I've had the ability or the opportunity to work with so many others that
true.
If I just worked with that one organization, it
would have been limiting.
It was limiting, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So
that's good. I do have another question as I think about, we want to see photographers launch out and into the industry as well. And I think for many that might look like freelancing or things like that. Or we have other artists and creatives that come and do training here with us at YWAM Dunham or who work with us on staff. And so I think for a lot of artists too, there's always that kind of aspect of, making it out there, which requires them to kind of, in a sense, get into business in a way, like
not
in
a way.
It's for sure there. So, I think too, like, I know for myself too, I think sometimes as a Christian, we have a heart to serve, right? And we want to serve in those things. And so sometimes I think that can create a little tension for like, well, what does it mean for us to want to serve with our gifting, but also is it okay to make a living off of it? And I think it is, but I just was wondering if you guys would care to speak into that a little bit, because I think that is a place of tension for a lot of Christian artists and creatives out there. We want to make a living, but we also want to be generous. We want to serve. And how do what's that intersection look like for you guys?
Between the two of us, I'm the one that will say, I'll do it for nothing.
Yeah.
Not realizing that organization may already have a budget for that.
Yeah.
So, you just have to be wise. There are organizations that we do pro bono.
Yeah.
And there are other organizations that have a budget, so we work within their budget.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
But I'm the one that...
And I'm the one that, Gary?
We have bills to pay.
They can pay us.
Yeah, they can pay us and we have bills to pay. So, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's a form of provision as well, right? And God providing, as well as you guys actually providing a service that's really needed and even prayed for and sought after with those organizations and budgets. And so sometimes I think it's really wonderful actually how it can be mutual.
Yeah.
There was this one organization, it was a commercial job, but it was for their nonprofit division. So it was still a nonprofit kind of a job. And they asked me to submit a budget for it.
Yeah.
So I submitted a budget, and fortunately, it was a freelance producer that didn't actually work for that organization. Yeah. He was just helping them. He wrote back to me and he said, "I cannot submit your budget. It's way too low.
Okay.
You need to like double that." So, you live and learn.
Yeah.
And business, if you're going to run this as a business, you need to learn some business.
Yeah.
I would say over the years, 75% of our time is, reaching out to new clients, marketing, doing our taxes, figuring out how to bill something.
Knowing how to write emails correctly.
Yeah. And then the 25% would be actually taking pictures.
Yeah.
So,
which I think it's sobering in some ways, because of course as creatives we want to
do it all the time.
We want to do that all the time, right?
Sure.
But to actually be able to do that full time, it requires this other, behind the scenes work, and it's in some ways it can be some grunt work. Maybe some people love it. I don't know if either one of you loves that, or
I think I love that part more than you do.
She does. She likes, the connecting with the possible clients.
Sure. Yeah.
She would always. Well, I would write an email to somebody, and she would say it's not warm enough. So she would rewrite it. So because
we joke that I've been his AI, but soon I might be replaced.
No, you'll never be replaced.
That's good. Well, it's actually been really refreshing to see you guys, team teach us this week, and I think just even in this conversation, seeing different ones jump in and seeing that lead. And I think, maybe another aspect I think for artists too is oftentimes, depending on the art form that we're working in, it can be potentially a bit more of a solo endeavor. And so it's wonderful to see you guys working as a team, but I was just wondering, like, would you guys have anything to say into just the importance of community and even Christian community? I know we've had a few conversations this week even about mentorship and what does that look like, but what would you say to encourage, again, young and aspiring Christian artists in the place of community and connections, that they're not going alone. Like, what's the role of Christian community there, or what does that look like for?
What we had wished it looked like early on.
Right. I wish that I'd had more community. I wish I'd sought out more community when I was younger. I didn't. So if I could say something to young photographers or young artists, I would say definitely look for mentors.
Yeah.
Because people like us at our stage of life, we're looking for people to share with.
Sure.
So people should be asking us, you know? But the young photographers and artists are like, oh, I'm too scared to do that and all that.
Yeah.
But
Don't be scared. Don't be scared.
Yeah, don't be scared. Yeah, we're willing to give our time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Maybe this may be a vulnerable question, so feel free to not answer it if you don't feel comfortable answering it. But I just wonder, like, I think we can be scared sometimes to ask for mentorship. We don't want to bother. Or we're wondering if we're not good enough. Do you, as someone or as people who are in a stage of life who you're really longing to mentor, is there any fears that you have there when it comes to that kind of connection with the younger generation? Or like, do you feel like you can offer that, or do you get a little nervous, or just what does that process look like for you guys? Or are you figuring it out?
No, not at all. I don't think, no, we want young people to come and teach us.
Yeah,
reverse mentoring.
We like reverse mentoring too. So we go to young people to figure out what's going on in the culture today.
Sure.
So yeah, so we'll trade. Trade mentorships.
Trade expertise.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe just some last thoughts here. But we've been so grateful for you guys sharing with us this week. Our students have been so grateful. I think I've seen light bulb moments for many, and even I think some of our students, just from hearing your stories and your experience as you've navigated, the industry of photojournalism, and again bringing your faith into that. I think they're thinking, oh man, like maybe I can see myself doing that actually, and just hearing those stories has been really helpful. But I was just wondering, what would you say your time here teaching has been like for you? We're YWAM, we're a missions context. How's that experience been for you guys? I know you've taught in other contexts in YWAM elsewhere too, but for you guys as people who have worked professionally for so long and who love the Lord, what's that experience been like for you in coming to a place like this and in sharing in a context like the photography school?
Well, when you're teaching in the first day or two, the students, they're not quite getting some of the things you're trying to get across. Sure. But then, like you said, when you start seeing light bulbs go off, when you see them asking questions that are showing how they're getting it,
yeah,
and they're getting excited about it, I mean, that makes it all worthwhile. It's just like, I told the students I have great hope, whether they become professional photographers or they just use photography in their life in general. It's exciting to see them learning. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And for me, just the hope of seeing what's going to happen next. There's a woman photographer we know that we met her when she was 19. Mm-hmm. And, her photography wasn't that great, but she has turned into a marvelous, amazing photographer who has done a lot of beautiful humanitarian, who has told a lot of stories in the humanitarian realm. And she's just amazing, and we love that. We love that we met her at 19, and just to watch that growth is so amazing.
Yeah, wonderful. Cool. Well, if I were to close up here, because I see time is getting away from us, maybe one final kind of question for, I suppose, our listeners, but if you could kind of finish the sentence. Here's what I would tell any Christian artist, creative, or storyteller that feels unsure about their place in God's mission. Here's what I would want to tell them.
If you can discern that God is putting something into your heart, you're still going to be scared. So do it scared. Do it afraid.
Do it afraid.
Yeah, step out. Be bold. I think that was the word you gave this week.
Sure.
Or somebody. But be bold.
Yeah.
So I think that we all need to be bold when we feel that God is, even the least little bit, moving us in that direction. Nudging. I like the word nudging. Nudging us in a direction.
Yeah.
Sure. If you feel nudged, even just the slightest nudge, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be unsure.
And you can give God permission to close the door. So
yeah. Right. Just keep moving. keep moving. So one of the things that we told the students this week, which I guess you need to give Ezra. Is it Ezra? The keep moving, keep adjusting, keep shooting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of Gary's photographer friends, that's been his saying is keep moving, keep adjusting, keep shooting. In the same vein, MAS, right? MAS. That just keep moving, keep going forward.
Yeah, don't give up. Keep pushing it. Adjust, change your perspective, figure it out. Keep going for it. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So if listeners to the podcast want to follow the work you guys are doing, what's some ways that they could do that?
Mm-hmm. So all the social media is Gary S. Chapman. Okay. So at Gary S. Chapman.
So Instagram or whatever website.
GarySChapman.com.
Yeah, not Gary Chapman.
Not Gary Chapman of the 5 love languages.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
Gary S.
Do you get that a lot?
Yes, I
do. Yes.
S. Yeah. What does the S stand for? Is that top secret?
No, it's not. It's Stanford.
Stanford.
Doesn't that sound royal?
Yes, wonderful.
I thought maybe my name should be G. Stanford Chapman.
Oh. Too late now.
Too late now.
Yeah, too late. I like the Gary S. It's a good choice. Cool. So, guys, thank you so much for sharing with us, not only on our podcast, but also here with us this week at YWAM Dunham. It's been such a privilege to have you guys. I mentioned it to you before, but I find just your generosity of spirit, your kindness, and just that intentionality you have to really draw potential and the best out of people has been really evident in our classroom context, and then adding to it all your professional experience, good tips for as we're behind the camera, thinking of composition, how do we approach, different stories and do it ethically and do it with grace and do it with kindness. It's been such a wonderful week with you guys. So I want to thank you so much for being here. And I guess I would say for those who have been listening, thank you again for listening. And, as we encourage you to think about what God's placed in your hands or your hearts, and again, it might be a camera or it might be a paintbrush or it might be a hammer, who knows what it is. But, some of those things is, don't give up, keep adjusting, keep moving, keep shooting if you have a camera, but keep working at your craft, keep, growing in excellence with it. But then also it's okay to be afraid. And I guess just my last encouragement would be, as they were sharing that, I was just thinking about the story of Joshua, this guy who had to be told, I think something like 12 times throughout, the story of Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, even to Joshua, be strong, be courageous, be bold, do not be afraid, do not be terrified. And it was often, and remember the Lord your God is with you. And so just want to encourage you guys too, if you're venturing out and taking a new risk into some creative endeavor that you feel God's calling you to, or even some other thing, again, be strong, be courageous, do not be terrified, do not be dismayed, for God's with you. So thank you guys for those lessons you were teaching us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool.